The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is now recognized.
Thank you very much. I yield myself such time as I shall consume.
The gentleman is recognized for so much time as he now may consume.
On a day when the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Camp, is unveiling a tax measure that requires serious bipartisanship to be successful, we are here on the floor considering a totally political bill in an attempt to resurrect an alleged scandal that never existed. Was there incompetence at the IRS in the processing of 501c4 applications? Yes, and I was among the very first who said that those in supervision should be held accountable. Was there corruption, political interference, White House involvement, an enemies list, as the Republicans have claimed since day one? Absolutely not. No evidence whatsoever. Yesterday, the IRS Commissioner confirmed that $8 million have been spent directly on those investigations, as over 255 people have spent over 79,000 hours doing nothing but responding to congressional investigations. An additional $6 million to $8 million have been spent to add capacity to information technology systems to process securely the 500,000 pages of documents Congress has received. And what have they learned? That both progressive and conservative groups were inappropriately screened out by name and not by activity, and that no one was involved in this outside of the IRS, and that there was no political motivation involved. When the Inspector General asked his chief investigator to look into the possibility of political motivation by the IRS, that investigator concluded, and I quote, "There was no indication that pulling these selected applications was politically motivated. The email traffic indicated that there were unclear processing directions, and the group wanted to make sure that they had guidance on processing the applications, so they pulled them." That is a very important nuance, end of quotes. Indeed it is. And it's precisely that lack of clarity that the IRS was responding to in proposing new regulations for 501c4 organizations. New regulations that are designed to bring certainty in determining whether an organization's primary activities are political. The regulations are among several steps the IG himself recommended in his audit report that the IRS undertake, each of which the Republicans repeatedly called for action on. On June 3, 2013, at a hearing before the House Appropriations Committee, Chairman Crenshaw told Acting IRS Commissioner Danny Werfel that, and I quote, "We're going to insist that the IRS implement all 9 of the recommendations in the Inspector General's report," end of quote. A Republican member of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Roscom, has a bill to implement all of the Inspector General's recommendations, including implementing new 501c4 regulations. Why is this important? Because applications for 501c4 status have nearly doubled between 2010 and 2012 to 3,357, and spending has skyrocketed. In 2006, $1 million was spent by C4 organizations, $1 million. 2010, $92 million spent. And in 2012, $256 million spent by 4 organizations. The designation C4 presently allows organizations to keep their donors secret, hidden as to which individuals contributed. And that's the secrecy that the Republicans are trying to preserve. Why? Why? Because the 3 largest spenders representing fully 51% of the total, are a who's who list of Republican political operatives. Crossroads, it's indicated here. Crossroads GPS, Karl Rove, $71 million. Americans for Prosperity, the Koch brothers, $36 million. The American Future Fund, the Koch brothers again, $25 million. That's $132 million of the skyrocketing $256 million that the Federal Election Committee had reported to it, according to the Center for Responsive Politics. If you live in a targeted state and you turn on your television, you have probably seen these groups at work distorting the Affordable Care Act. That is why we are here today, purely and simply. Not because Republicans want to stand up for the rights of social welfare organizations, and they often talk about small ones, but to preserve the secrecy around the Republicans' big campaign efforts. These are draft regulations that the Republicans themselves called for. Over 76,000 comments, and I think now more, have been received, and the comment period does not close until Friday. Look, these regulations aren't likely to come out this year anyway, with all these comments. So why this bill? Why this bill? It's very, very clear, and it's very simple. There is a problem with 501c4s. The three organizations that I mentioned that are involved as political operatives in one form or another, these are people who have donors nobody knows. This is secret money. Why are we standing here and saying to the IRS, don't look at 501c4s. Don't look at the possible massive abuse. Don't look at what has happened in the last few years, where political operatives under the guise of 501c4 have moved from $1 million in many cases to $256 million reported to the FEC. Our constituents, Democrats and Republicans, are offering their comments, and some of them I agree with, and they deserve to be read, but not to be shredded in the hands of a November campaign strategy by the Republican Party of this country and by the Republican Conference of this House. I reserve the balance of my time, and I ask unanimous consent that the gentleman from New York, Mr. Crowley,